Speak English as a tool, not a goal. Most people are learning English for the wrong reason. They wake up every day thinking, I must be fluent. They chase accents. They memorize rules. They measure themselves against native speakers, and slowly, without realizing it, they turn English into pressure, fear, and self-doubt. But here is the truth no one tells you. English is not the destination. English is the vehicle. You don't reach English, you use English. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. This story begins with a simple shift in mindset, one that separates people who stay stuck for years from people who suddenly start speaking with confidence, even with imperfect grammar, even with an accent, even with mistakes. Because real fluency does not come from chasing perfection. It comes from using English as a tool to live your life. Think about how children learn language. They don't wait until they know enough. They don't study grammar books. They don't apologize before speaking. They want something. They need to express something, so they speak. Language is born from need, not from study. But adults do the opposite. They say, when I become fluent, then I'll speak. They say, when my grammar is perfect, then I'll talk. They say, when I stop making mistakes, then I'll be confident. That day never comes. Because fluency is not a finish line. It's a byproduct. And the biggest mistake English learners make is turning English into a goal instead of turning it into a tool. A goal creates pressure. A tool creates freedom. When English is your goal, every sentence feels like a test. Every mistake feels like failure. Every conversation feels like judgment. But when English is your tool, something powerful happens. You stop trying to sound fluent and you start trying to communicate. You stop performing. You start connecting. You stop chasing approval. You start sharing meaning. This is why many people who study English for 10 years still freeze in real conversations, while others who never studied properly speak confidently after just a few months of real use. It's not intelligence, it's not talent, it's purpose. People who use English as a tool are not obsessed with correctness. They are obsessed with outcomes. They want to explain an idea, tell a story, solve a problem, make money, build relationships, express emotions, defend themselves, ask for help. English becomes the bridge, not the destination. And once English becomes a bridge, fear loses its power. Fear exists only when something feels like an exam. Think about it. You don't panic when you use your phone. You don't freeze when you use a calculator. You don't feel embarrassed when you use Google Maps. Why? Because these are tools. You don't judge yourself for not using them perfectly. You use them to get where you need to go. English should feel the same way. But somewhere along the way, learners were taught to treat English like a performance, something to be judged, corrected, ranked, and compared. So they become silent. They know words, but they don't speak. They understand sentences, but they don't respond. They think in English, but they answer in their native language, not because they can't speak, but because English has become emotionally heavy. This is especially true for learners in non-English speaking countries. They carry invisible pressure. People will laugh. My accent is bad. I sound uneducated. What if I say something wrong? So they wait. They wait for confidence. They wait for fluency. They wait for permission. But confidence is not something you wait for. Confidence is something you build by using the tool. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop asking, how do I speak fluent English? Start asking, what do I want to do with English today? One question creates anxiety. The other creates action. Because when English is tied to action, your brain stops panicking and starts cooperating. Your brain understands tools. It does not understand perfection. This is why people speak English better at work than in classrooms. At work, English has a job. It has urgency. It has meaning. You're not speaking to impress. You're speaking to survive, to perform, to contribute. And suddenly, grammar improves naturally, vocabulary sticks faster, listening becomes sharper, confidence grows without effort, not because you studied harder, but because English had purpose. This is also why many English learners feel more fluent when talking about topics they care about. When emotion is involved, fear disappears. When meaning matters more than mistakes, fluency accelerates. So the real question is not how good is your English? The real question is how often do you use English to do something real? Because language grows through use, not observation. You don't learn to swim by watching water. You don't learn to drive by reading rules. And you don't learn to speak by staying silent. You learn by entering the experience imperfectly. This segment is not telling you to stop learning grammar. It's not telling you to ignore mistakes. It's telling you something far more important. Stop waiting for English to be ready. Use it while it's unfinished. Tools are meant to be used, even when they're not perfect. A hammer with scratches still works. A phone with a cracked screen still functions. A sentence with mistakes can still carry meaning. And meaning is the heart of language. Once you accept English as a tool, you stop asking permission to speak. You stop translating every thought. You stop rehearsing every sentence. You stop apologizing for your accent. You start acting. And action is where fluency lives. In the next segment, this idea will go deeper. into why chasing native level English actually blocks real fluency, and how redefining success unlocks faster, more natural speaking ability. But for now, remember this foundation. English is not your goal. English is what helps you reach your goals. The moment you treat it that way, your fear weakens, your confidence grows, and your voice finally comes out. Why native level English is the biggest trap. Most English learners are secretly chasing something dangerous. They say they want to speak English fluently. But what they really mean is, I want to sound like a native speaker. And that idea, more than grammar, more than vocabulary, is what keeps them stuck. Because native level English is not a tool, it is an illusion. Native speakers do not speak perfectly. They interrupt themselves, they forget words, they make grammar mistakes, they use fillers, slang, half sentences, broken logic. Yet learners believe fluency means sounding smooth, confident, and flawless. So every time they open their mouth, they compare themselves to an impossible standard, and comparison kills momentum. Here's the truth that frees you. Native speakers don't succeed because of English. They succeed because English happens to be the language they already have. English is not their skill, it is their default. For you, English is a tool you're picking up, not an identity you must become. The moment you turn English into identity, I must sound American, I must sound British, I must sound educated, you turn communication into performance, and performance creates fear. But real communication is messy. It is human. It is imperfect. Think about this carefully. When you speak your native language, are you trying to sound impressive? No. You are trying to be understood. You don't rehearse. You don't panic. You don't judge every sentence. That freedom comes from function, not from perfection. Native speakers are fluent because English serves them, not because they mastered it. So chasing native level English reverses the process. You start serving English. You hesitate. You self-correct mid-sentence. You stop talking when you feel unsure, and fluency slows down. Real fluency begins when you redefine success. Success is not sounding native, eliminating your accent, never making mistakes. Success is getting your message across, being understood, understanding others well enough to respond. The fastest English speakers are not the most accurate ones. They are the most functional ones. They speak to solve problems, not to prove ability. When you release the need to sound native, something powerful happens. Your brain relaxes. Your words come faster. Your confidence rises naturally because pressure leaves. In the next segment, we will talk about fear and why your brain freezes even when you know the words. Segment 3. Why your brain freezes. When you try to speak, you already know this feeling. You understand English. You know the words. You follow conversations. But the moment it's your turn to speak, your mind goes blank. This is not a language problem. This is a survival response. Your brain is not afraid of English. Your brain is afraid of judgment. When English becomes a goal, your brain treats speaking like a test. Tests trigger fear. Fear shuts down creativity. And language requires creativity. Your brain asks, what if I'm wrong? What if they judge me? What if I sound stupid? So it chooses silence. Silence feels safe. That's why many learners are good listeners but quiet speakers. They are protecting themselves. The solution is not more vocabulary. The solution is lowering the emotional stakes. Tools are low pressure. Goals are high pressure. When you use English to do something small, your brain cooperates. For example, explaining something simple, asking a basic question, sharing an opinion. Briefly, not performing, just functioning. Fluency grows when fear shrinks, and fear shrinks when English stops being a judgment arena. In the next segment, we'll talk about how daily self-practice works when English is a tool, not homework. Segment 4. How to practice English without feeling like homework. Most learners fail because they practice English like school. Rules, exercises, pressure. But tools are learned through use, not study. You don't practice using a phone. You use it daily. English should enter your life the same way. Instead of asking, how can I study English today? Ask, how can English help me today? Use English to think through problems. Talk to yourself. Explain your thoughts out loud. Narrate your actions. This removes performance pressure. Self-talk is powerful because there is no audience. Your brain relaxes. Your fluency improves naturally. You don't need long sessions. You need consistent usage. 5 minutes of daily functional use beats 2 hours of forced study. In the next segment, we will talk about confidence and why it comes after action, not before. Segment 5. Confidence is the result, not the requirement. Most English learners are waiting for something that will never arrive on its own. They are waiting for confidence. They tell themselves, I'll speak when I feel confident. I'll talk when my English improves. I'll try after I'm fluent enough. And so they wait. Days turn into months. Months turn into years. English stays in their head but never leaves their mouth. Because confidence does not come first. Confidence comes last. This misunderstanding is one of the biggest reasons people stay stuck at the same level for years. They believe confidence is a prerequisite for speaking, but in reality, confidence is a side effect of speaking. Think about anything you are confident doing today. Driving, using a phone, talking in your native language. Were you confident the first time? No! Confidence came after repetition. Confidence came after mistakes. Confidence came after discomfort. English is no different. But learners treat English differently because they attach their self-worth to it. When you speak English, it doesn't just feel like you are using a language. It feels like you are exposing yourself, your intelligence, your education, your background. So confidence feels necessary because the emotional risk feels high. But here is the truth your brain needs to hear. You do not gain confidence to speak. You gain confidence by speaking. Confidence is built from evidence. Your brain needs proof. Every time you speak and nothing bad happens, your brain learns, I survived. I was understood. I didn't fail. That evidence slowly replaces fear. But if you stay silent, your brain collects the opposite evidence. Speaking is dangerous. Silence keeps me safe. Silence feels comfortable, but it strengthens fear. Speaking feels uncomfortable, but it weakens fear. This is why people who force themselves to speak early, even badly, become confident faster than people who prepare forever. They don't wait for confidence, they borrow courage. Borrowed courage is acting before you feel ready. It is saying, I'm nervous, but I'll speak anyway. That single decision changes everything. Because once you speak even one sentence, you break the fear loop. Fear thrives on imagination. Action destroys imagination. Most fear exists before speaking. Once you start talking, fear loses power. This is why people often say, the first sentence is the hardest. After that, words flow more easily. Confidence does not suddenly appear. It quietly grows in the background. English learners often believe confident speakers were born confident. They were not. They simply spoke more often than they stayed silent. Confidence is not personality. Confidence is practice with discomfort. Here is something important to understand. You don't need high confidence to speak. You only need slightly more courage than fear. That's it. Even nervous speaking counts. Even shaky voice counts. Even broken sentences count. Your brain does not care how elegant your English is. It cares that you acted, and every time you act, confidence grows a little. This is why using English as a tool is so powerful. Tools shift focus away from yourself. When English has a job to do, explain, ask, respond, you stop monitoring yourself. You stop asking, how do I sound? And start asking, did my message go through? That shift lowers self-awareness. Lower self-awareness reduces anxiety, and reduced anxiety allows confidence to grow naturally. Confidence does not grow when you judge yourself. Confidence grows when you use yourself. Think about this. When you speak your native language, you don't feel confident. You feel normal. That is a real goal. Not confidence, but normalcy. And normalcy comes from repetition. When English becomes part of your daily life, not a special event, it loses its emotional weight. It stops feeling dramatic. It becomes ordinary. And ordinary things do not scare us. Many learners believe they need to fix their fear first. But fear does not disappear through thinking. Fear disappears through exposure. Small exposure, safe exposure, repeated exposure, not performance, not pressure, just usage. This is why speaking to yourself is powerful, why journaling out loud works, why recording your voice helps. These are low-risk ways to build evidence. Your brain slowly learns. English is not dangerous. I can survive speaking. And once that belief changes, confidence grows automatically. Confidence is not loud, it is calm. It is the absence of panic. And panic disappears when English becomes familiar. You don't become confident, then speak. You speak until confidence appears. That is the order. Every fluent speaker you admire followed that order, whether they realize it or not. They spoke while unsure. They spoke while imperfect. They spoke while uncomfortable. And slowly confidence followed them. So stop waiting, stop asking, am I confident enough? Ask, what is the smallest thing I can say right now? One sentence is enough. One thought is enough. Confidence is built sentence by sentence. And once English becomes a tool you use daily, confidence stops being a problem. It becomes a natural result. In the next segment, we will go even deeper and talk about mistakes, why they feel so painful, and why they are actually the fastest path to fluency. Segment 6. Mistakes are the engine of fluency, not the obstacle. Most English learners believe one dangerous lie. They believe mistakes are a sign of failure. Every pause, every wrong word, every sentence that comes out not perfect, it feels like proof that they are not ready. But this belief is not just wrong, it is the very reason fluency stays far away. Because mistakes are not the enemy of fluency. Avoiding mistakes is. Think about this carefully. If mistakes truly stopped learning, no child on earth would ever learn to speak. Children say everything wrong at first. Wrong tense, wrong pronunciation, wrong structure, wrong logic. And yet every single child becomes fluent. Why? Because children are not protecting an image. They are not afraid of sounding stupid. They are not afraid of judgment. They are not afraid of being wrong. They speak to express, not to impress. Adults, on the other hand, carry ego, fear, and social pressure. They don't just hear their mistakes, they feel them. A mistake feels like embarrassment, exposure, weakness, failure. So the adult brain learns something dangerous. Silence is safer than mistakes. And that is where fluency dies. Because language cannot grow in silence. Here is the truth that changes everything. Mistakes are not errors, they are signals. They tell your brain what to adjust next. Every mistake is feedback. Every correction is information. Every awkward sentence is progress happening in real time. But only if you allow it. When you treat English as a goal, mistakes feel personal. When you treat English as a tool, mistakes feel mechanical. And tools are allowed to be imperfect. Think of a tool you use daily: a keyboard with missing letters, a phone with a cracked screen, a car with scratches. Do you stop using them? No! You use them because they still work. Your English works too, even when it's imperfect. Meaning travels before grammar does. Communication happens before correctness. Yet many learners freeze the moment they realize they made a mistake. They stop. Mid-sentence. They apologize. They restart. They mentally punish themselves. This breaks flow. And fluency lives in flow. Fluency is not accuracy. Fluency is continuity. The ability to keep going, even when something is wrong. Native speakers do this constantly. They say, no, actually, what I'm trying to say is, they adjust while speaking. They don't panic. They don't stop. They trust that meaning will land. Learners, however, are taught to stop, to correct first, to be perfect first, to think first. But thinking kills speaking speed, and speaking speed is what builds fluency. Mistakes train your brain faster than correctness ever will. Why? Because your brain remembers emotion. A corrected mistake sticks deeper than a memorized rule. When you say something wrong and then adjust, your brain creates a strong connection. That connection becomes automatic next time. This is why people who speak a lot, even badly, improve faster than people who study perfectly but stay silent. The brain learns through use plus correction, not through avoidance. But here is the most important part. Mistakes stop feeling scary when you stop attaching your identity to them. You are not your grammar, you are not your accent, you are not your vocabulary size. You are a human using a tool, and tools improve through use. When English is a goal, mistakes feel like judgment. When English is a tool, mistakes feel like maintenance. You don't shame yourself for misusing a tool once. You adjust and continue. This mindset shift alone can double your speaking speed, because fear slows speech and safety accelerates it. Once you give yourself permission to speak imperfectly, something surprising happens. Your sentences become longer. Your ideas become clearer. Your confidence grows without effort. Not because you stopped making mistakes, but because you stopped fearing them. Fluency is not built by getting everything right. It is built by surviving being wrong and continuing anyway. And the more you do that, the quieter fear becomes. In the final segment, we will bring everything together and define what real fluency truly is, beyond grammar, beyond accent, beyond perfection. Segment 7. Real fluency is freedom, the final shift. If you remember only one thing from this entire series, remember this. Fluency is not about English. Fluency is about freedom. Freedom to think without fear. Freedom to speak without apology. Freedom to express without self-judgment. Everything else, grammar, vocabulary, accent, comes later. Most learners believe fluency will give them confidence. But the truth is the opposite. Confidence gives fluency. And confidence comes from one thing only: repeated proof that you can speak and survive. Fluency is not a moment you arrive at. It is a state you grow into, slowly, messily, imperfectly. And that growth only happens when English stops being the center of your attention, when English becomes invisible. Think about the last time you were deeply focused on a task, maybe explaining something important, maybe telling a story, maybe solving a problem. You weren't thinking about grammar, you weren't thinking about accent, you were thinking about meaning. That is fluency. Fluency is when language disappears and intention takes over. But that only happens when English becomes a tool, not a performance. When you stop asking, am I fluent yet? And start asking, did I say what I needed to say? Real fluency does not sound perfect. It sounds alive. It has pauses. It has fillers. It has mistakes. It has personality. Native speakers are not fluent because they are correct. They are fluent because they are comfortable. Comfort creates speed. Speed creates flow. Flow creates fluency. And comfort is not something you wait for. It is something you build by acting before you feel ready. This is why people who use English for real life, work, survival, expression, improve faster than those who only study it. They don't have time to be perfect. They need to be understood. And understanding is enough. When English becomes part of your daily thinking, not something you switch on, it stops feeling foreign. It becomes familiar. And familiarity is the root of confidence. You don't need to speak like someone else. You need to speak like you in English, with your rhythm, with your accent, with your identity. Your accent is not a weakness. It is evidence of courage. It means you learned a second language, something many native speakers never do. Fluency is not sounding native. Fluency is being unafraid. Unafraid to start sentences, unafraid to finish them badly, unafraid to correct yourself and continue. This is the final shift. Stop measuring your English. Stop ranking yourself. Stop waiting for permission. English is not a trophy to win. It is a bridge to cross. You cross bridges by walking, not by standing and analyzing the structure. Use English to think. Use English to feel. Use English to live. And one day, without noticing, you will realize something powerful. You're no longer learning English, you're using it. And that is fluency, not perfection, not native level sound, but freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to connect, freedom to move forward. That is the real goal. And once English becomes your tool, you already have it.